big episode, really pumped. But first, we like to kick it off by paying respects to traditional owners of the land, and shout outs to elders past, present, and definitely in the future. So, got to do it right. Now, this next guest that we have, man, I've been pumped. I've wanted to do this for a while. You know, the man that needs no introduction, but I'm going to introduce him anyway. Big HAU in the house. Round of applause from the guys that are actually in here. It's like three out.
Sup. Thank you for inviting me.
Man, I haven't given you hectic amount of like context to like this the podcast, but you might have seen a little bit. But I'm really
shout out to Sesk and Lux, man. That was a really good episode, man. Those guys need their own podcast, man.
Dude,
like, boy.
Part of me was like, I'm going to get them both in because they bounce off each other. But at the same time, it was like put the mic
married
down.
couple.
Yeah. You should have seen after as well the photos. They were sort of like leaning and they're like, yeah, like bro, they are actually fam. So, it's dope. But a big thing for me is really, and probably some of the best feedback I'm getting is some of the young guys that just didn't get an opportunity, I think, to understand a lot of history. And sort of give some context to the scene a little bit and things that are been happening. And man, someone like yourself has been around and relevant and active for a long ass time. So you were certainly one of the first people that we wanted on.
I appreciate that.
No, bro. Thank you. Thank you. But first of all, for those that don't know, we kick it off with the easy questions. Where are you from? Where you rep? I mean, I know personally. It starts with a Q.
Q-Town, Struggle Town, 2620. Okay. Yeah, well, my name is HAU. Full name is Langomia HAU Latukefu. Tongan heritage. Born in Canberra, raised in Queanbeyan. And for those who don't know, Queanbeyan is part of New South Wales. But you grow up kind of. It's like a suburb of Canberra almost. It's just
I only figured that out last week because I was like really? Queanbeyan and I was like, oh shit, it's actually still in New South Wales.
Yeah.
Here's me thinking it was Canberra. No.
I used to say back in the days when I used to come up to Sydney, I used to say Canberra because no one had heard of Queanbeyan. So that's why a lot of times I would mention Canberra. As that's where I came from. But really, I was born there. But raised in Queanbeyan.
Dope. What about in terms of? So does that mean you were more, in terms of active, like, so if you were to go to the city, obviously you head to Canberra?
Yeah.
Is that the vibe?
Yeah, pretty much. So Queanbeyan was its own town and like other areas, like other suburbs, you have your little kind of town center. But Canberra was kind of like the big city for us.
The big smoke?
The big smoke. It was only, the main city was only probably like 20 minutes away.
Yeah, true.
But, when you're a kid and you're catching a bus to like Civic, the place where we call the city. It's a big trip.
Yeah, bro.
And people used to ask, "Oh, are you from Queanbeyan?" Yeah, and they're like, "Oh," and they start scoff. Shit,
you're from the sticks.
Yeah, pretty much. That's what it was like. And,
yeah.
People would scoff, and then there's other places around Queanbeyan like Captain's Flat and other areas that are kind of more country than us.
Yeah.
They're the ones that we would say like, "Oh, man, you're from the sticks."
Just the further out you go.
Yeah,
crazy. What about it just interests me as well because for yourself then, and I ask a couple of the guests just in terms of hip hop, what was your first, I suppose, first hip hop experience? I don't know whether it be from like hearing it from like one of the family members, or do you know what I mean? And what was it like then being down at Queanbeyan and being into hip hop like?
Yeah, first, my older cousins and my sister loved hip hop, and as you do when you have older siblings or older cousins that are in something, you kind of follow them, and so. But I think one of my first experiences with hip hop was seeing like Herbie Hancock, Rocket. If you're younger, and go check that out. Herbie Hancock is an accomplished jazz musician who. One of his records mixed jazz with hip hop, and and there was a lot of like popping and locking, and there's DJing there, and I was like confused, like what's going on? All these kind of sounds, and it was exciting to me. Besides that, I grew up on reggae and pop music like any other kid.
Yeah.
But that I was so engaged, and then I would see like an old show called Countdown on ABC, and Molly Meldrum, the host, interviewed Rocksteady crew, and then they had all the breaking and b-boying, and and they would show footage of them breaking on cardboard in Manhattan, or they were in like the Bronx, and you just see these abandoned, burnt-out buildings, and it was just so foreign for someone like me growing up in Queanbeyan.
Yeah, straight up.
What the hell is it? These guys are wearing mad shoes, parachute kind of clothes, b-boying, and then their landscape was like a war zone, and it was just so far out to me. And then you kind of later realize that obviously South Bronx is where hip hop began, and
Yeah.
a lot of culture, like blacks and Hispanics, created this music and this culture, and the reason why all these buildings were burnt out was the landlords setting fire to their buildings to get all the what do you call it, insurance.
Yeah.
But people were actually living in these places.
There,
And it was just crazy, and that and The Message by Grandmaster Flash,
Yep.
Furious 5, and so it was the early days. A lot of people bug out when they come from the States and realize that hip hop introduced to Australia wasn't too far behind. Like we couldn't get a lot of stuff,
Yep.
but the introduction
Was still there.
Yeah, it was like quite early, because you'd have a lot of cousins that lived over there, and they would send tapes, and then or they'd go over there and they'd come back with
Yep.
stuff like that. So it's early days, and it just felt like, especially like a minority in Australia,
Yep.
just connected with it too. Just
I was
seeing
gonna
these
say,
kids,
because that would have been a massive relating piece, especially from here being, very, rock orientated, and a lot of, white groups, and like pop music's going to be popular irrespective, but in terms of like a relatability, that would have been a big thing for you as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. And again, you're young. I was in primary school, and it was the new music. It was exciting. It was raw. It was unadulterated. So it felt like, oh, this is our music.
Yeah, hell yeah.
My elders had reggae or whatever, but hip hop was
yours.
Yeah.
That's good. It's dope to hear as well, because like there's a lot of generations. Like, I don't want to say like we're sort of like, or even you, like we're sort of older generation, but hip hop overall is young. But you actually sort of got to see a lot of the start of it, and you're speaking about cassettes and that. And because I had to read. I have to read for these things. You know what I mean? I was actually thinking like early days for you, and I was looking at Tribe Letter L.
Yeah.
That was the first crew for you.
Yeah, that was the first crew. That was my cousin and Daniel from Commercialism.
Yeah.
But before that I was rapping with a couple of the boys from around the way, and but that was the first release, and on cassette. That was funded by the government. We got this grant.
Dope.
And it helped. The funds helped. Was donated to the homeless and housing and stuff. So it was quite incredible. And we had a store in Canberra called Impact Records, and it was an import store, and that was the spot. You would get imported, hip hop, heavy metal, R&B, everything.
So not just like one genre, everything.
No, it was all genres, punk, and it wasn't just the normal stuff that you would see at places like Brashes or whatever. It was actually imported. Yeah, Brashes.
Shout out to Brashes, RIP.
And it wasn't only music too. They imported comics and T-shirts, band T-shirts and posters.
And magazines and all that tangible stuff. That's where you got your information from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was quite an incredible store. And then we had our tape there. So, we'd go to the section of the cassette section and the hip-hop section, and you'd see Dougie Fresh and Boys to Men or whatever, and then you'd see Tribe Letter L, and I was like, man, Mama, we made it. It's like, it was big. It was really big, because that was the store. And even though the tape was only available in Canberra,
it
was a big deal, because you got to remember, like, no one was burning stuff on the CD at that stage yet.
and like even like
this stage.
double, yeah, you know, even double cassette player, you know. Like you had the boombox with one cassette, but when stuff started having two cassettes and you could like rip it from one to the other, that was something.
You knew you were onto something, man. When you're
like,
got a tape and like dubbed it. But that's when people started getting possessive, you know, not lending you stuff because they knew,
because they wanted to have it.
They knew that you were gonna dub it, and then you had a copy, and it was you know, it was a really awesome time, you know, cassettes and vinyl still popping, and even cassettes are making a comeback.
100%.
But just it was a great period, you know, and you know, I've told the story many times too. Like we had that store, but a lot of the times I would save money and then catch a bus to Sydney in the morning, like 6:30 bus. Come to Sydney, go shopping, music, clothes, and then catch the last bus back. So it was like you know.
I was gonna say how because
that's like a 4-hour trip, you know,
by
on a bus.
100% it would be, and that's what I was gonna say. Like, so for early days for you, and the boys, was it just Canberra, or did you find, you know, because I sort of noticed as well, like when I was reading up and like, you know, it ended up just being you and Daniel. After a while, it progressed, you know, into that, as it does, you know, for groups and stuff like that. After that, you know, did you spend a lot of time as a group or as artists up in Sydney making connects? Like, what was your other spot you'd have to sort of get to?
Yeah, like Sydney was the spot, you know, even though it was like a 4-hour trip. But, you know, I should add, like, you know, there was a whole generation before Daniel and I even came up, you know, a lot of breakers, a lot of DJs, and Canberra was well known for its graffiti artists as well. Yes. And there was a handful of rappers like doing their thing in Canberra, like generation before us, and even our peers. But yeah, I feel like Daniel and I were the kind of first to really venture out of the city, and Sydney was the closest place. And yeah, it's funny, that tape we were just talking about, I had it and I went to the lounge. Shout out to Blaze. Blaze was working. I had heard of Blaze because he had the Vapors magazine, and you know, he was a writer and DJ, and he was working at the shop. And I took the tape to him. I was like, oh yeah, I make music too. Which was all right to say back then, because it was like no one was. Now everyone, you can't say it now.
No,
everyone's
now
like,
it's
okay,
all right, you're a rapper as well. Yeah,
let me just shove it in the box over there. But you know, he was like, oh, okay, cool. And then he played it, and he was like, oh wow, this is mad. And I said, oh, you can have it. And he's like, oh, let me swap you. And he gave me a VHS of some festival that was happening in, I think, in Campbelltown or something, and Death Wish Cast was playing, the original 046, Noble Savages. And yeah, it was just like live footage, you know. And I took it home. I was like, wow, this is crazy. So that was
and that would have been dope as well to, I don't know, just see other dudes smashing it. Yeah, definitely.
You know, because again, this was before the net, and so you wouldn't know what half of these people look like. You know, you'd only see them in a magazine or at a gig, or even, you know. That's why I feel like blessed that we lived through the period of record stores, because they were like real hubs. Yeah. You'd go there and you'd actually meet people, hang out the whole day, meet people the first time. Like, oh, are you so-and-so? Yeah. Oh, you know. And yeah, it was just a great period. And yeah, Blaze was the first connect. And then, I don't know how, but then I connected with Sleepy Monk and Mr. Clean and Angel, rest in peace, and, you know, and of course Ill Pickle, rest in peace as well. And so like urban poets. So there was like a little collective that were heavily influenced by East Coast hip hop, which we were as well. Yep. And we connected. So every time we came to Sydney, we'd connect with them on a music level. But you know, I also had a crew, KOA, who were like writers, and they lived here. They were like from West Ride and things like that, and they were like crims and rioters and street dudes. So Sydney has always been like the home away from home.
Yeah, 100%, man. And it's funny because, you know, particularly back then as well, the scene would have been, you know, real small. So once you get into one crew, you sort of start knowing a lot of things. Who's beefing with who? Well, that's sort of shit.
Well, that's the funny thing, because we coming from Canberra, we were never involved in the beef. You know, we'd start to travel to Sydney, and then later on Melbourne and Adelaide and things like that, and you kind of link with people, and then you start talking about other people, and they'll be like, "Oh no, we don't." We don't mess with them, and
You're
but
like,
they're like,
"Oh, okay,
but
cool."
yeah, cool, So I feel in the early days we got a lot of passes because we were like,
Went in it.
yeah,
Yeah.
we were just the guys from Canberra.
Yeah, dope. What about like first, you say Blaze and that, and I think that Blaze. So Parallax, that was the first.
Yeah, Parallax View. That was a label that was run by Blaze and Dr. Fibes.
Dr. Fibes, yeah. So how was that? Because I mean, ultimately, you got your grant. Actually, speaking of the grant, because grants are a big thing now, and it's a business now in a very good way, right?
Yeah, for all those people like get onto it. You might get knocked back a couple of times, but those grants are there for you.
Yeah, 100%.
To do your thing. So just keep doing it.
Keep smashing them. But how was the grant process back then? Or was that a bit of a fluke?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know, because a guy that was looking after us at that time was kind of helping us out. He filled it out. So I don't know what the process was.
You're just like, cassettes on the shelf.
Yeah, that's it. I was just thinking, Impact Records, cassettes, man, whatever you want, And, money wasn't a factor either. Like, I mean, obviously money helps.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like, so we're not because all the money went back.
Yep.
And that wasn't a problem, and
Especially
that was the first time we got to
sure.
work in a proper studio as well.
Which man, I keep saying to people as well, which is back then is crazy. Like when you're in a studio, like
there were no setups back then.
No,
Unless you had like decks and a mic,
maybe
and you just recorded it straight to tape. It wasn't like you didn't have programs, and it was very rare. I mean, you had samplers and stuff.
Yep, drum machines and shit.
Yeah,
like that.
drum machines, of course. But to put your vocals down, you pretty much had to go to a proper studio.
A proper studio.
And then you had to pay hourly rates, and so you had to be on like super prepared. Not like nowadays, you just go there and people just smoke and party and this and that.
Yeah.
Oh shit! Like one more hour, better start doing a song. Then it was like 10 o'clock. There, bang, trying to knock them out. Like this and that. Rush.
Whole EP in one
4
session.
hours. Man, I'm paying $600 for this, man. Like, stop fucking around. Let's do it. So
100%. But what about in terms of groundswell, like for shows, and I'll get to this later. But part 3, random thoughts. Getting up to that point, you guys had quite a few releases. Already had a groundswell, and I suppose a pretty good show circuit by then.
Yeah, we're very fortunate because again, because we were from Canberra, we weren't involved in a lot of kind of
politics.
Yeah, in the city politics, and also we weren't influenced by the city. Like certain. At that point, Melbourne had a sound, Sydney had a certain sound, and Brisbane had its sound. Adelaide, and so when we started really making music as Coolism, just myself and Daniel, we were listening to a lot of other stuff like jungle and breakbeat and dancehall and things like that. Experimenting with drugs and stuff. So a lot of our music was different anyway. So we kind of, whether you loved it or not, you knew it was us.
Yeah,
and so
it was unique.
We
had its own sound.
Yeah, we had carved our own niche, and so a lot of our stuff was kind of up tempo as well. So it really worked on the stage.
Yes.
And we always bass heavy music and
which is a bit forward, I think, for the time.
Nah, man, 100%. You kind of look at a timeline.
Yeah.
And the music that we were making then, because at that point people were still doing kind of boom bap, traditional kind of boom bap sound, which is awesome. Very Premiere influenced.
There's no real bass in it. It's sort of still choppy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like a lot of chops, a lot of kind of similar drum patterns and samples, and then, but we would like, I wonder if we got this sound from jungle and put it into hip hop, and kind of added climaxes and the way we edited it and things like that. So it was definitely a lot different. So, and we were again listening to a lot of dancehall and then when we were listening to hip hop, there was a lot of stuff like Roots Maneuver and things like that. So we're kind of inspired by a lot of different stuff that our peers were getting inspired by, which kind of gave us like our difference,
100%.
point of difference.
And I mean, that's sort of probably better for me to go into the next one. But you know, working with like Rodney P as an example, like that was a big deal back then, and still a big deal. But you know, but back then as well, that's probably not where people were looking for collabs.
No,
But
yeah.
but you guys were.
Yeah, because we were listening to a lot of UK stuff as well, and a lot of people were, but it just wasn't like now where it's really become a part of the culture. You know, you kind of it was like an acquired taste.
Yes.
At that point, you know, there was kind
like
of
the Australian
like
stuff.
the
now.
Australian. But again, I think because we connected with Rodney because again we were influenced by similar things that he was influenced by.
Yep.
And he had a show.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how'd this come
Yeah,
about? Because
so,
that's a you know that's a dope hookup.
Yeah, he had a show in Canberra.
Oh,
Yeah,
your
him
home,
and Daddy
that's your
Skits.
stomping ground as well. Like.
Yeah, you know, and we were playing that night too, and we're like, okay, if you're gonna be in town early, let's just jump in and just try something.
Yeah, yeah.
And he was down. I was like, oh, what do you need? He's like, man, it's fried chicken and Jim Beam, man, let's go. And
Really?
and yeah, and he wrote it and
give that.
recorded it and then did the show that night. You know, and he was
Hectic.
just, I think he was also appreciative because, you know, because we were real big fans of London Posse.
Yep.
When a lot of groups weren't, you know, and then of course his solo stuff and I think at that point too he was doing his radio stuff with Skits.
Yep.
And yeah, he's an inspiring figure. Like, just has that voice and that tone.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
It was a special moment to have him on the track.
100%, man. Would have been one of those moments you'd be like, oh shit, I'm here in the studio.
Oh, bro, it was exactly
like,
like
quiet,
that.
not
Kind
saying
of
anything
sitting
in
in
the
the
corner.
studio and he's like riding away, and I'm just thinking to myself, man, that's like Rodney P.
You're like, I thought I made it with a cassette.
yeah.
I'm here with Rodney P. Like, damn.
That's it.
Yeah, it's sick. I want to talk about like Parallax View and you know labels because you were, you know, you had a couple of indie Invader.
Yeah, well,
and
Parallax View was the
View
first one.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much just created because at that point, like, no one was. Wait, when were you signed to Sony? Was that
Signed
late
in
90s?
03.
What?
I signed in 03.
Oh, 03. Okay, yeah, so it's before that. Yeah, but before
the indie game.
even the indie game wasn't even popping. You know?
Yeah, I
it was
know.
it was only.
So how would it work out though? Like, how would you go? Like, how would was that just like, yo, I'm gonna put this out and fuck, we'll just slap the stick on it?
Yeah, you know, like go to stores like, oh, I've got 5 copies. Can you sell them? And things will be on consignment. Go back the next day. Oh, how'd you go? Oh, yeah, we sold this amount. Can you send some more?
Hectic.
That was how it was, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And Parallax View was creative out of the fact that there wasn't any other channels for us to kind of professionally sell these things, you know, because you could do tapes and then you could take it to record stores and stock 10 tapes there, and then you sell them $10 each, you get $100.
Yeah.
And then get the $100 and make 10 more. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Exactly
it was
right.
that easy, you know.
And it was
before GST and everything too, so it was
Yeah, so
cash
you
in
just
hand stuff and
Yeah, the
Yeah.
actual slang sort of hand-to-hand situations.
yeah, you know, like, you know, Too Short and all that, we're doing it out of their trunk. We were going to stores, sending it to stores and
Packing it up,
yeah,
taping it.
that's it. I used to rack 10-pack tapes in the backpack, like go to Grace Brothers, rack 2 packs, put it in the bag, and walk out, go home, dub the tapes, you know, and the handwrite the
Hustle,
each,
Your
each
fucking hand
cover
styles had to be good.
and send it over. And it's funny because there's a few tapes here and there that were different,
Yeah,
like would put different songs on it, and then years later, people were like, oh. Yeah, I got that tape where this and that, and I'd spin out like, oh yeah, that was just like a one-off thing. We put an extra song on there.
Bro, that's the coolest shit.
Yeah, you know, it really. I mean, if people have these tapes, it's like a real collector's kind of, you know, item because most of them were the same, but there was sometimes we'd like, oh, well, fuck this
So
one
was
up,
that
you know?
was that you just being like, you know?
Yeah,
like
it was just us
fucking-
being
just
like,
blazing and be like, yo, fuck it, I'm gonna.
nah, not even blazing.
Okay.
Man. It was just us
Just
being
kick 'em
like,
back.
yeah, just us being like, oh, this would be funny if we put an extra song on there, and whoever gets it would be like thinking it's part of the album, but then they'll talk to other people and like, oh, what about this song? And they're like, what's that? You know,
That's
so
so
that kind of
dope.
yeah, that kind of
Me taking notes like had random shit to like cassettes.
yeah, you know, that was our train of thought back then. You know, just to kind of thinking it was funny, firstly, but then thinking like, oh, that's kind of dope.
It's a bit of a niche.
Yeah.
Yeah, hectic, man. What about like then, it started to obviously climb after that, and at what stage, because, you got nominated at because back then it was like sort of independent awards, like dance awards and stuff that, because ARIA is before the first ARIA that was for, what did they call it, urban? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was like best urban release.
Urban release.
That was the first year, but previous years they had best dance, and so
there wasn't a category.
there
wasn't a category for us.
Yeah, so like Catalyst got nominated for a dance award, even though he's not dance, but I think it was the closest category that he could fit in there.
Yeah,
and possibly Resin Dogs, I'm not sure, but yeah, it's just there wasn't an industry at that point, like.
So prior to that, and like building up to those nominations at dance awards, because that's still a nod to like, well, you're onto something.
Yeah.
At what point do you feel maybe you thought it was like, I don't know, taken off? Like maybe that you felt like, oh shit, like this could sort of, really sort of be something? Or were you always sort of working the side hustle? Because what else were you doing the whole time?
Playing rugby.
Oh, true.
Yeah, hip hop and rugby were my passions.
Fuck yeah.
I was either going to play for like Australia or Tonga or going to be a rapper, and it just came to a point where I couldn't do both because you really had to invest your time and energy in one of them.
In one of them, true, yeah.
And like, yeah, I hate training, man. Like, so it was kind of like a no-brainer to me.
I'd rather train my voice than...
Yeah, like my dad, I could tell, I was very fortunate. I had very supportive parents.
Yeah.
Even though I could see they were like, okay, he wants to make music. Okay, let's support him, see how this goes. And I remember, yeah, my dad, I'm sure my dad was kind of a bit like, because, they come to Australia for us to get, like, go to uni and a lot of ethnic minorities, their parents come from a certain area and they come to Australia in hope their kids are going to get great education and great jobs. And, I'm sure it wasn't in their plan for their son to become a musician, because it just wasn't.
It's not secure.
Yeah,
I feel,
especially at that point, like no one was really. I mean, you had like Sound Unlimited posse kind of doing things here and there, but it wasn't like you would look like now. We're like, oh yeah, I'm a rapper and I do this and that.
Yeah.
And so it just wasn't in the scope for my parents to think, okay, you must be a musician. This could work out.
And rap more particularly, because I remember my dad when I told my dad I rap, there was no white rappers at that stage. He was like, get a job, and then maybe
that's a big thing. Like, when are you gonna get a real job? And
you know.
But again, like I said, I'm fortunate. I had very supportive parents, and they kind of like let me do it. So yeah, like rugby was the other thing I'm doing, and then I was like, nah, I'm gonna do this music thing. But going back to your question, when we felt it was kind of, I think when we started doing shows, I remember we got booked to play a show in Adelaide. Yeah. And that was our first, outside of Sydney, that was our first show interstate.
But Sydney was sort of like second home.
Yeah, because you could drive there. It wasn't really a thing. But Adelaide, you had to fly there.
Yeah.
And so I remember I was sitting next to Daniel, and it was our first show. I think it was at Cargo Bar, and I think I had met Hilltop Hoods that night and a few other people. And I just remember sitting next to Daniel and be like, man, can you believe it? These guys are actually paying us to go there and then to play, and for us to stay somewhere, So it was a very big thing, and that felt like, okay, this, if anything, this will be one hell of a fun ride.
Yeah, man. 100%. Because you can always do other stuff later. Do you know what I mean? Like, so ride it while it lasts. But then you sort of get this pinnacle, and well, maybe not pinnacle, but like a very high moment, like you're up for this award. Did you guys know you were going to win at all? Or was it really like you didn't know?
Yeah, we weren't even going to go. I've told the story a lot. We weren't even going to go because the tickets, as you know, the tickets were like $300 and something. And in the category was us, Daniel Merriweather, Cat Empire, I don't know why, but they were. Oh, I suppose they rapped a bit
Well, they
too.
sort of rap on the
Yeah,
beats,
1200 Techniques.
and they had Karma out that year.
Yeah, and like
That was-
1200
that was a
Techniques
dope tune.
were pretty much the group because they were breaking the mainstream.
Yeah.
And just trying to.
And they had that animated clip, which is
Yeah,
really
that
big.
was the combo one.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so we were just thinking, man, there's no way we're gonna win.
Yeah.
And the tickets are $300+. But then I talked to Daniel. I said, man, let's just go because it might be the last time we're invited to something like this, and it'll be kind
Next
of
minute
fun.
was the first time.
Sorry?
I said next minute it was the first time. And then there was
Yeah.
like plenty after that.
Yeah. So yeah, and then we went and we won, and it truly was like a surprise, and like we hadn't written anything, and yeah, it was very
First cab
surreal.
off the rank, bro.
What was that?
First cab off the rank.
Yeah.
Like you're the first to win that award. That's like some Jazzy Jeff Fresh Prince shit. You know what I mean? Like the first category carved out. So like,
Yeah, and I kind of
massive
feel
deal.
like sorry, I cut you off, but
No.
I kind of feel like those first few years were the only years that something like that could happen,
Yeah.
where a group that wasn't that big could be nominated and win. You know what I mean? Where
Yeah.
then as it went along, then it became the kind of Seth Centuries, Drafts, Hoods, and obviously all awesome artists, but they were already at an established kind of point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like
Yeah.
the lesser known groups weren't able to kind of break through anymore because there were already quite a few established acts, 360s,
And I think that
Sinessa.
Bliss and Essa, yep. And I think the landscape changed. There was a little pocket there before we had that other lull where, and yeah, you guys were sort of still at the start of it where it started to ramp up, get commercial. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. It was still fairly underground. Even at that point, Triple J, they didn't have a show, hip hop show then. They were playing hip hop, starting to play local stuff, but definitely not as much as they started to later. And there was no show at that point either. So it was really kind of underground, and even to have that category at that point is kind of amazing.
It was still probably, I don't want to say premature, but it was still probably a year or two ahead. Like it was good that they put it in there. Do you know what I mean? During that time of commercialism, how did you? Because I told this story. I don't know. I did an ill-equipped thing the other day. And do you remember? Do you remember when you came up to me at Metro? Because I got pissed off about Mystery drawing that pic in. I fucking got to find the pic, but it's a pic of you.
I think I might have seen it like maybe like OzHipHop.com. Remember that forum?
Oh, bro, 100%. Big shout out to Mass MC and
Yeah,
OzHipHop.
Mass MC. So I think someone might have posted it there.
Bro, I want to find it, but basically, I was a bit cut because I was doing, I was a bit butthurt, let's say, because I had put in my yards for a couple of years, and then I got whacked in there. Like, I can't remember who I was down there. It was with Jay West, I know that.
Jay West is also nominated. That's right.
And I can't remember who else, but I was like, man, I'm not one of those guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there was still a commercial, element to some of the music being made. And one thing I wanted to touch on with you was with regards to the commercialism of it, and over the last couple of years, you've changed your tone a bit on because back in the day, bro, you're one of the OGs. There were the early day crews, and it was very staunch back then about like if you flowed.
A lot of the people came from the rider scene, and if you know riders from back then, bro, that's like a whole different sport, man.
100%, bro.
Stabbings, bashings, kidnappings. It was a proper street shit.
Well, that was the first. I think that was the first gang street shit here was the riders, and they were super staunch on the accent, and you sort of changed your tone a bit more. Now you're a bit freer, a bit obviously got a bit of perspective, whatever. But back then, how did you feel? I suppose being that guy and still doing it as 100% authentic, because that sort of set the tone then on what is an ARIA award-winning artist, because then there was nods then to authentic Australian hip hop. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and yeah, you're right. You know, I was very staunch about having a. I used to say Australian accent, but then I changed it to natural accent because, you know, I mean, even you and I, we have Australian accents.
Yeah.
But they're different.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And, you know, someone that from the West sounds different, someone different in the East, even in one city.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Doubt.
So what is an Australian accent, really? Someone that lives here 2 years or someone who was born here. So I always change it to natural accent. And yeah, I was, because at that point, too, we were very... Because we were just fighting too for recognition and acknowledgement from the industry. So we're like, yeah, we are aware it's an American culture, but this is our version. This is Australian. So we were very staunch about being who we were and who we were representing. And so we were like, well, if you're an Australian artist, you should be rapping how you talk. Correct. You know what I mean? And I still feel that way now.
Yeah.
Like that's a preference. Back then, I was kind of like.
Pushing it.
It was like it was an agenda. Like, nah, fuck that. You have to like blah blah blah. But you know, as like you said, you know, as you get older, you kind of it's a different perspective, and a lot of people used to say, well, it's not the way they say, it's what they say, and I used to say like, no, it's how you say it as well. But then you kind of think, okay, I get that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So it is, even though I have softened in you know, in that kind of area. As a preference, I still like to hear how they you know, the way they rap, how they talk.
Yeah, without doubt, man. Because you know that's actually something that changed for me.
Yeah,
you know, personally, was for a lot of years it was about me, me, trying to get up as an artist. But then as you get older too, I started to change my perspective. It was more like, well, hold up, it's actually not about me really. It's more about like the next guys, and if I'm not doing it as me, then it's what example am I, you know, living for them? And dude, like even now, and you can totally appreciate like doing it for your children. Yeah. Like, you know, you want them. The last thing you want is to see their dad and be like, yo, like how come you're my dad, but then you're not my dad over here? Do you know what I mean? Like there's not the same correlation. So it's interesting you say that, because definitely it's natural accent too. Yeah. You know? Yeah,
exactly. You know, because you know you grew up. Where'd you grow? Like Belmore and stuff like that.
Well, have you heard
Bankstown?
Sefton?
Sefton.
Okay, so Sefton is. You know how you go like, I'm from Canberra, but it's creepy. Right. Yeah. So I'm from Bankstown. Yeah. But like I'm actually technically from Sefton, and Sefton is actually only known for one thing. Does anyone know what Sefton's known for? Playhouse, yeah.
Playhouse.
So it's like that? One massive fucking strip club in the middle of nowhere. It's in the middle of nowhere.
That's why I haven't heard of it.
It's the worst. So anyway, so that's the same. But yeah, so
because even out west, you know, like inner west accents is different than greater west accents as well. You know? And that's what makes 100%. That's what I always say makes us unique on the world's stage. You know, like people from Australia, you know, don't sound like people from the UK or from Europe or from the US, and that was my thing too. Like, why you want to sound like bloody Guru from Gangstar?
It sounds dope, but
when I could listen to Guru from Gangstar,
yeah, 100%.
You know what I mean? That was my argument, and it just was really about identity, and the whole commercialism thing. That was never a thing with me, like hip hop going commercial.
Yeah.
You know, it was just if it was dope, it was dope.
Yep.
You know, because again, I was listening to stuff outside of hip hop, so I could appreciate hip hop on different levels than the staunchest kind of hip hop, you know, advocate.
It's dope to hear, because I feel like now is a really good time, you know, to have that representation of natural or just ourselves. Because one thing that flipped me as well was like we started getting artists down here from America that really started throwing their weight around, and I started getting the shits like, I'm like, how can you like disrespect us like that? Like, you know what I mean? And like it was because like we're all like still hanging off them, like, oh, like we want to be like you, and I'm like, nah, it's cool to be from here, like, you know what I mean? So definitely changed for me as well.
Learning, you know, because hip hop was, I mean, us making hip hop was still early, so we were still finding our feet with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and again, it's just, you know, another stage of building at that point.
Yeah, it was still very young. Going from labels, right? Because one thing that I noticed, and it's sort of tied into something else for you in terms of life move, but 2008, you guys signed to Mushroom.
No, that might have been. No, we never signed. The only label we signed to was Invader Records, which is run by Catalyst. Big shout out to Catalyst.
Yeah,
Big
massive
brother.
shout out to Catalyst.
He did a lot for us, not only like musically, but just learnt a lot. He took me on tour and everything, and his label at that point was independent, but I think later started going through either Mushroom or Universal.
So did you guys ever have a major label association, or was able to keep it
like
pretty
publishing,
indie?
Mushroom Publishing.
Oh, true.
But that was it. No, we weren't signed as a group to any major labels.
Okay. What about that year though, 2008? Because that's when you took on Triple J.
2008. What's this? Yeah, 2008.
2008.
Yeah.
So how was that? How's the transition? Because like for you, like music started to like slow. Like how would you say it? Like
Nah, definitely not, because we released the album in 2010.
yeah.
But it was just
Not as
yeah. It was just an opportunity that came along.
Yeah.
I wasn't like occasionally at that point. Maya Jupiter, shout out to Maya. She was hosting it, and then she would. Her being a host, artist herself, would tour or would go somewhere, and then I would fill in.
You would fill in. I remember that.
Yeah, like time to
right.
time, maybe even like twice, 3 times. And I thought it was fun. I was like, man, what 3 hours of playing whatever hip hop?
Jazz.
Yeah, hell yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And get paid. What?
Yeah.
No brainer. And then
100%.
when she decided to move to LA,
Yeah.
then myself and some other people, we applied for the job, and fortunately, I got the job. And but one of the main things before I took it was I didn't want to shoot myself in the foot. Like I didn't want to take the job and then Triple J stop playing us.
Because that is a thing, isn't it?
Because it's a policy, definitely a policy. I can't play my stuff on my show. Not that I would anyway.
No.
So hey, welcome to the HAU Hour, man. We're gonna play Coolers in the HAU tunes for the next hour.
Back to back.
And you can buy it at this. Yeah, not that I would anyway. But it's just like an ABC policy. Like, can't do that anyway.
Conflict of interest.
Yeah,
Because ultimately, I know that you're getting paid fucking 0.00001% per play, but
yeah. So that was a thing. I was like, look, I don't want to take this job, and then you stop playing, and like, no, it's not. That's not a concern. Like we'll take that.
For that transition and getting into radio and that opportunity, it's no secret, Triple J started after a couple of years of Unearthed and dictating. I don't want to throw Triple J because obviously that's a job as well. I don't want to throw him under the bus, but
no, man, like
they know it.
Yeah, I think people kind of, when they talk about certain things, kind of tiptoeing around it because look, I'm very proud of where I work, but at the same time, I know that anywhere it can be put under scrutiny. You know what I mean?
100%. But I feel like you've been, at least, look, I'm an artist as well, obviously. So, whenever I reach out to you, unless you're under the pump, you've always got time to, throw the homies on, in the interest of the scene and the culture. And not because we're, not because it's like homies, it's more because it's like, oh, no, well, that's the new shit. Like, we'll play it. But we can always, like, hit up Triple J hip hop show and get a spin on the reputable show. So how is it, I suppose, being the only, I don't know, like the balance to the station, because a lot of people can throw Triple J and go like, oh, they've got their agenda and they play this and they play that, but everyone also knows, on the contrary, well, they can get their stuff played on Triple J with HAU because he'll still play the dope tunes and spin it. So how does it feel being in there and being able to still rep the culture?
It's a responsibility that I love to have.
Yeah.
I'm in a fortunate position where a lot of people trust me and in what I play and the sounds and eras that I represent as well. I can understand a lot of excuse me, frustration that artists have when, because like you said, you know, like you're bound to get a run on my show because I just love hip hop music.
Yeah.
But
and like you said, your listening taste is diverse.
yeah, but you know, I kind of run into some artists that's kind of ask me, well, how come we don't get played on like daytime stuff? And you know, and I think for a few years there was a sound that people were trying to do because they thought that's what Triple J was going to play.
People were literally saying like, so these are my tracks, and this is
my Triple J track.
Like,
I used to tell people like, man, don't do that because
But
don't do a radio track because you know, that might have worked maybe mid-late 90s or something, but it was just like, man, just make a record that you just make music that you love.
Yeah.
And if you feel like, okay, this could work on radio, then push that, but don't make the radio song because then if it doesn't get radio love, you're just gonna feel like a dick.
Yeah.
You know, like
you're like,
man,
I wouldn't have made that track.
Yeah.
The funny thing was as well, is anyone that I ever heard go into Triple J to like, what's the dude's name? There's a dude that you'd pitch tracks to. I don't know
Richie
who it is.
Kingsmill?
Yes, I think. And a handful of my friends that'll go in there, they'd pitch stuff, and it was always along the lines of what you said. They'd be like, all right, this is a track I'm pretty sure that Triple J is going to play, and then they'd always play the other track. Yeah. So you're right. Like it would never be like there was a Triple J sound. It's just sort of dependent on what they wanted.
I definitely feel there was kind of, well, people thought there was.
Yeah.
Because you know when the Hoods blew up, it was they had a sound.
True.
And then Triple J, you know, were very supportive of them. And then, you know, it was like the Obese Records era, you know, like kind of the early 2000s to, you know, to whenever. And I think people thought, okay, to get on Triple J, I'm going to have to make this kind of music, you know. And it was very hit and miss. But yeah, that was one hell of a period, man, that Obese run was a big run.
And they had some...
Right, if they had kept everything, you know, because there's, you know, I've heard stories about mishandling of funds and all that stuff, but we won't get into that.
We're not throwing any shade on anyone. We weren't there.
But, you know, you think, like, if that house was kept in order, at one point, they had Hoods, Draft, Bliss and Esso, Illy. They had other artists too, but
was Hijack and Torture on?
Yeah, they released the stuff, but you know, it was the powerhouse, they became like some of the biggest hip hop acts at that.
They were Australia's death row, bro.
yeah, they were, you know,
straight up.
And you know, it was you just think if they had kept that all together and just kind of continue that, it would have been one of the biggest hip hop labels in the world.
Oh. Yeah, without doubt, especially now with the footing that we're starting to get internationally. I mean, it's still low key, but you know, it's still. I feel like there's certainly a still upward trajectory for us. But 100%. I think you're totally right.
They definitely had to, like, after a while, had to evolve in terms of sound and things like that. Because as you saw, man, like hip hop just changed so much here
in a short period of time.
Yeah.
Oh, bruh.
Like the many faces of hip hop in this country. Like it changed quickly, and it changed, like, you know, because we could talk about that whole movement, but then we could talk about the movement that kind of like people like Mono Crooks kind of kicked off.
Yes, without
Wise, you know, and there's so many awesome periods. And
well, I mean, we can sort of talk about that as well because you know, I think that's an awesome time and turning, you know, particularly for, you know, like black people in Australia, you know, like I like Afro-Australian scene coming out strong, and you know, Manu and Wise, who I've both known for a long ass time since I was like young coming up. The thing I like about them as well, particularly Wise, is that he actually went from the same sort of thing, transition from the American vibe to. Bro, I got a K1 CD at my house still, right? and Wise has no facial hair.
facial
Yeah, he looks
Baby smooth.
yeah, you know. But that transition and starting to be a bit of a voice for, you know, like, you know, Black Australia and Brown Australia. You know, how did you feel standing back and being like, you're Polynesian and to be able to go, oh shit, this is fucking hectic. Like, we're starting to get a bit of traction and representation.
It was beautiful. I like, because you know, for a while there it was very white hip hop in Australia.
Extremely.
You know, and there was a lot of, you know, you go to some shows or festivals and there was that hint of nationalism and racism and, you know, redneck fuckery in there, and I was just kind of like, nah, this is not what it's meant to be.
And
like.
It's hard if you're like one of maybe a handful of,
because like me, there was
army.
there's Empha,
Yep.
you know, even like later the kind of like the Africs, but you know, also got a point. Before it became mainstream, hip hop was very, very multicultural because it was either kids, you know, from Europe or African background or Asian, and
Yep.
you know, the minorities were obviously there was
Yeah.
white people too, but it was very much a minority kind of movement, and then it became mainstream, and then obviously it's a wider audience, whiter.
the wider audience. Yeah.
You know, and it did become like, oh, fuck, what is this? What is happening here?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
because of that, a lot of people felt outcasted. You know, they didn't feel included, and a lot of those people were people of African community, and so they started to create their own pockets and their own scenes, and I think that out of that kind of ugliness, that's the best thing that could have happened, because then they started making their own music and being influenced by other stuff. You know, I started meeting kids. Oh, who do you listen to? You know, young kids, and they wouldn't listen to Hilltop Hoods. They didn't listen to Bliss and SO because they didn't speak for them. You know,
100%.
like they knew them and they're like, okay, yeah, they're doing a thing, but no, they're not speaking for us.
And you know, actually, one thing, just to sort of touch on that, that's actually one thing that, like, even from an underground or like harder area perspective, like a lot of the guys, if you talk to them, they used to rap in American because they'd actually relate more to American content than they would to Australian content.
No, definitely.
Do you know what I mean?
Definitely.
So, you know, it's been like a massive transition. For you, though, as well as an MC and seeing that, and, you know, like, I don't want to, you know, you're a busy man. You do so much. But as an MC, you've sort of, you know, you've unashamedly taken I don't want to say a back seat, but sort of maybe a side seat as an MC, turned into like a outstanding back seat. Yeah, okay. But it's been dope seeing you be a mentor to some of these guys. And how was that transition as an MC, like to sort of start to pass the torch a bit, you know? And
it was again, I feel very fortunate that I was able to do something like that on my terms.
Yes.
As opposed to like people going, yeah, maybe you should give that a rest.
Yeah.
You're pretty good, but you know, it's these guys' turn now.
Yeah.
So you're like doing the show and then seeing so many people coming through and being able to talk to these young artists and, you know, offer advice or feedback. So that whole mentorship kind of just came out of doing the show.
Yep.
And out of me doing it for ages. And then it was only, I think, maybe last year or the year before, that it was the first time being an MC wasn't the priority. And I was, it wasn't like okay, this is what I'm going to do. It just became that.
Organic.
Yeah, organically. And and then I was sitting back thinking about it, and I was like more than cool with it. It was like, okay, you know, obviously it's the time. Like, if there's a chance to be in the studio, I love being in the studio, but that's not my thing. Now my thing is being in the studio with other people and kind of just vibing.
I watch your Instagram.
Yeah, you know, just
like,
kind of vibing with them and being helpful where I can.
Yep.
And I remember telling my wife that too, like, because I think the tours was the first thing. Like, yeah, I kind of not really into tours. I'd rather be at home with the family.
Yes.
Shows and that, and they were the first things to kind of go, and then me being the priority was, you know, because, you know, you get to an age where helping other people before yourself is more satisfying.
Yeah.
You know, I think you get to a point where it's all about yourself, and then there's a point where it's like, okay, now it's about other people and helping them. And I remember telling my wife all of this, like, I don't want to do this and that, and she was just like,
really?
But yeah, because ever since we've been together, that's all. Funny story is, like, we used to see each other. Well, she's from Queanbeyan too.
Yeah.
And then she moved up to Sydney, and then I would do shows, and we'd kind of catch up, and then we'd kind of, start seeing each other. And then she wanted to be like exclusive, and I remember it was like, nah, I'm doing my thing, I'm doing music, blah blah, blah. And then I remember I was like, okay, let's give it a crack.
Yeah.
And I remember telling her, it's like, all right, we can be together, but you gotta understand that music always comes first. I bet she in her mind she's probably going,
yeah, bro.
All right, we'll see. But she was like, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And then, obviously things change.
Yeah.
And I'm fortunate to be able to do the radio and do other stuff, mentoring and because I never had that coming up. Like I said before, all my mentors, if they weren't family, they were like street dudes. Shout out to KOA crew and they taught me a lot. But in terms of industry or music, I didn't have any. So like my man Ricky would say, like, be the mentor you wish you had, and that's what I became. And so I was fortunate that I had all these other things happening, and like yourself, you kind of start diversifying, and adding value to other things. Music will always be a part of us, always be happy, but then it's like, what else can I do? Like and using everything that you've learned and all the knowledge you've acquired. It's like it's got to go somewhere, and we're always in touch with what's happening, and the younger generations are always reaching out, and I think that's what separates people like us to a lot of our peers. You grew up and was like, I'm not fucking with this, that, this guy wearing tight jeans, fuck,
Shout out to tight jeans.
But you know what I mean? Like, I think we're fortunate that we have that kind of personality and genuine love for the culture and music, that we're able to be cool with it not being about us. Because hip hop has always been like, I'm the man.
I'm the man.
I'm this
flex,
and that.
flex,
Fuck
flex,
you.
flex.
I'm better than you. But then you get older, and then you're like, you know what? I'm okay with not being the man anymore.
Yeah, 100%.
And you want to share that love and that knowledge. And I think, like I said, like people like us, is needed. Like to kind of just contribute to people's journey.
Yeah, man, and bump up the next cats and add that power and that knowledge to them, and that sort of goes into really perfect to the next question, because
I knew you were gonna nod in.
We planned this before.
MC segue.
MC segue. So the next one was what was crazy for me, because I'm from the West, and what was dope to see is, you started to get involved with people from the West, dropping out there, and I know that you dropped past Street Uni at Druitt, and starting to touch base with some people that probably wouldn't have those opportunities before, and like I'm a massive advocate for West Sydney and the talent and the struggle and the shit that people have to live through on a day-to-day basis, and then for you to sort of, pop your hand in there and go, all right, well, I'm going to have to get familiar and start to shed a bit of light. How did that, because there's a lot of spotlight on West Sydney now. Yeah. There's a lot of eyes, and like that is a massive contribution. You're a massive reason for that, but what sort of made you, or maybe was it artists, or was it just, was it a particular artist, or maybe a couple of people, or it just gradually ended up where you started to, really be that connection with, the west of Sydney, and then, those mainstream opportunities?
Yeah, like when I was coming out, West Sydney was the place, like for b-boys, rappers, writers, crims, like Death Wish Cast was one of the biggest acts at that time. So I was familiar with places like St. Mary's and St. Clair's, and I'd never been there, but I always hear it. You know, like when I started coming to Sydney as a kid, I would go to places like Auburn because it was one of the only few Tongan places that we kind of knew and would go there and stay. And I thought, oh wow, this is Sydney. You know, go to what's that fruit market that's kind of around there?
Oh, Flemington.
You know, and go there and see kebabs and shit. And I was like, wow, what is this place? This is crazy.
This is not Queanbeyan.
This is definitely not Queanbeyan. You know, and so I was familiar with Sydney and the talent that was coming out. You know, athletes as well.
True.
You know, like being rugby and league and union, and it wasn't like I didn't know. It wasn't like, okay, I'm going to reach into West Sydney and do what I can to help prop it up. It was just the artists that I was into happened to be from there.
Yep.
You know, and it wasn't till kind of as I was dealing with them, I would kind of discover the intricacies of West Sydney and what people traditionally thought of, you know, West Sydney as, you know, places like Bogan and kind of down and out. And what was that thing that show that came out of Mount Druitt? Struggle Street or something like that?
Oh,
was that what it's called?
Actually, I think that was
Struggle Street. And I just remember a lot of people were up in arms like, man, that's
not us.
It's partly us, but it's not us.
Not us,
you know? And I just kind of and you know, like people like Elijah Yo were already like doing their thing as well. So I knew like artists like that. But when I started working with 1-4 is when I really started, okay, like there's the inner west, there's the southwest, there's the greater west. Okay, these artists from here, from there. And I just started to realize like, wow, okay, like there's some really awesome artists out here. And there always has been, but then I think at this point it was really starting to bubble.
Yeah.
You know, because people like Pistol Pete and Enzo were already kind of
tipping numbers.
Yeah, they're already kind of like numbers are coming up, and then Hef's doing his thing as well, and a couple of artists out there, like 6 Pound is also like doing stuff like early days. But yeah, like working with 1-4 was eye opening, you know, and a lot of it was because, you know, they were like nephews, you know, like cousins, and they were making music because at that point too, like, a lot of Islanders were rapping in American accents. True, and when I heard them, they were like, "Oh, okay." They're like the Australian accent, natural accent. They're obviously listening to like grime or drill or something, you know.
Was that maybe nostalgic for you? Now that I think about it, because like for you, that's like, oh, you know, here's the guys, but they're like Coolism. Their influences are not.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, now you mention it's like, that could be part of it too. You know, like in a sea of talent, like these guys really stood out. And you know, shout out to Lux. He connected me to Selly, because Selly put out a single, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm working with Kid Selly from 1-4. And I was like, oh yeah, I heard of 1-4, because Ricky put me onto 1-4, Elijah as well. And I had met Manu, rest in peace, Hollowback Beats, at a Tracks event. You know? And he was like, "Oh yeah, I produced for these guys 1-4," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, I've heard of it."
So you kept hearing it in like little spots
and then I saw I think it was Really Don't Want It or something, and I was like, "Wow, what is this? This is like crazy, something crazy." And shout out to Petrina as well, because you know at this point I had the label running, but I didn't have artists, and I was kind of looking at certain artists. And I was conflicted, like between like, what do they want? Do they want me to try and find the next so and so who's doing well, or do I go with gut feeling? And then Petrina is like, look, you know, you take a risk, and then it was like, bang, like 1-4, because like I was already talking to Hess a little bit, but then he was talking with Zig, shout out to Zig, and kind of felt like he was in good hands.
Yeah.
You know,
Makes
and
sense.
then I reached out to 1-4, and it was a learning experience for both of us, you know. And I had heard about shout to Eski as well, because Eski.
I was gonna say, yeah.
think-
Eski put me onto 1-4.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think Eski. Did you asked Ricky to come out talk to them?
Yeah. I asked
Yeah.
a couple of people to come out.
Yeah,
Eski was like, everybody,
I was like, everyone
listen
come.
to 1-4.
yeah, because I remember Ricky would tell me about 1-4, and then he's like, "Oh, actually, I'm gonna meet them."
Yeah, dope.
Because I think JM had just gone in, and they were kind of JM had just gone in or something, right? And they were kind of like Eski had realized like these guys are just they're too talented to not do anything.
He was pushing.
So
bro,
Ricky
yeah.
went out, talked to him, and I said, "Oh man, next time you go out, I want to come."
Let me know. Yeah, dope.
And then I just met up with him, and it was just that kind of raw energy that like kind of Cursor and Enter and like Sesk and Gravy Baby and Forte obviously kind of
I
introduced.
fucking love it when like he's just like talking these names. They're so fucking dope, bro.
You know,
It's all West guys, like
like
as
Sky
a-
High, of course, too.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
really introduced a different, like,
Type of hip-hop.
yeah, different. It was street. It was raw, and they obviously kind of paved the way in certain ways. But then these guys were taking that on and
boosted
taking it further.
Yeah.
It was like really street. It was violent, and like, obviously I didn't agree with everything they said, but you couldn't deny the energy.
Yeah.
And the talent as well. So, yeah, just getting involved with them and then kind of just being able to facilitate what was needed to, for them to at least just make music, be consistent.
And that's the guidance they needed, man. Because I even remember sitting out there. Who was I with? Lex? Yeah. I was sitting with Lex, and the crazy thing was not whether or not they had the tools, not whether or not they had the talent, but it was more if they had, I think, the consistency and the mentorship that would help them, like, just, even with all the trials and tribulations that we, the ups and downs that those boys go through, and, they're in the public spotlight now, but just, like, keeping it on the rails, and chugging along while...
And Eski would, know there's fucking hair-pulling, experiences dealing with those guys, but it was exciting. And
but that's maybe sometimes that's what the price,
that's
comes
it,
with that.
100%.
Yeah.
You're dealing with cops and media and this and that, but man, the music they're making is crazy, and people from overseas were feeling it, and it was amazing to see them go from where they were to where they went to in a year.
Yeah, bro.
I must say
nuts.
though, also like before I was involved, they were already doing pretty crazy.
Oh, bro, they were
numbers.
already doing numbers. Like,
in
they
the
already had
area,
numbers
like
there.
they were already doing 100,000. And when I saw that, I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
How come
where have I been?
Yeah, even when I first saw Cursor too, I was like, what the? How is this? And you just kind of realize like there are scenes or at least movements outside of what you normally know.
Yeah.
And like those guys were already doing a thing, but again, it came down to consistency.
Yep.
Because there would at least one song, and then someone would go inside, and then 6 months later, another song would come out, and so it was just being able to be on their ass about stuff. Like, oh, you written that stuff? Like, okay, studio this time, be there. Like, finish this. Got to do this, and that, and it was just kind of giving them kind of like structure.
Yeah.
And having faith that they'll turn up, and I've made it a point like no drinking, no smoking at the studio. Like, we're coming here to work. Like, so at this time, we'll be finished by this time. You can do whatever after that.
Yeah, dope, man.
And
it's hard to, and I have to say, because it's hard to speak to guys that are in a routine, they've already got habits that, they've established. You need to have someone like yourself, a figure, to be able to be like, yo, I've been here, I've done this shit. You check the credentials. Like, are you serious or you're not? Because if you're serious about the bullshit, then go do the bullshit. But if you're serious about
and I kind of feel like that was why they were open to meet and have this conversation, because obviously my track record's out there.
Yep.
I mean, they may not know my music or listen to the show.
Imagine they're all like low key, like massive coolism.
Yeah, but it's not hard to find out. Like, oh, okay, he does his show. Or he might know something. And again, like credit to them for being open You know, same as Hefs. You know, when he came out,
He's the nicest guy, but
you know.
Hefs is like the nicest dude.
Yeah,
So
I
you meet him
know.
and he'd be like, hey,
I mean,
man,
they're all nice
how
guys.
are you?
I mean, Esky, you know, they're all nice
Esky shakes
boys.
it. Everyone's the nicest person at Esky because Esky's the nicest guy
But,
as
you know,
well. That's why.
everyone, they're all nice boys, man. It's just in certain situations, they're not nice boys. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So,
yeah. Look, you know, we don't need to go. Let's just, you know, welcome to prison. No jokes. But hey, I gotta say, bro, like in terms of that track as well, and I remember, I think I actually hit you up because of, I don't, you know, I just know your involvement, and know obviously Ricky's super involved as well. But like, I just felt as though after the mentorship and after like getting a few things out of the way, like welcome to prison, I think was like a real full circle mentality and expression. You know, that track was big for them, I feel.
Yeah, I was very proud of them for that track, you know, because when I met them, YP and Lex were already on bail, and JM had just come out. So there was a lot of legal shit that was already happening before I got involved. And, you know, through the whole process, like there'll be bail conditions of curfews of this and that. So, and there was always that looming date. It was like where, you know, they could go in.
Yep.
And so we're always conscious of that. And like, that's why I kind of feel like they wanted to work hard because they didn't know what was going to happen.
Yep.
You know, they wanted to do a lot of, you know, wanted to release a lot of songs and record a lot. And yeah, you know, and what happened. And that song was, I feel stylistically too, because at that point, everyone wanted to make drill. Everyone had the same videos. Everyone looked the same. So they kind of like...
Everyone's trying to be 1-4.
Yeah, you know. And so they were like, okay, we're going to switch it up. Talk about some real shit too. Because at that time as well, it's like, I kept saying to them, like, you know, that was a big thing I would say. It's like, you got to tell your story. Yeah. Whether it's crime related or whatever, that's your story. That's what's happening to you now. But there will come a time where you're gonna have to evolve as an artist and, as you know, more importantly, as men. You know,
which is a big thing, man, because these guys need, you know, peers like that, you know, and they need those positive, you know, role models, you know, because not everyone, you know, has them sort of vibe, you know. So it's been dope. Yeah,
I remember Spenny too saying in one of the sessions, they were like, man, we just needed someone like you to believe in us, you know, like
belief is a crazy thing as well, yo.
You know, they're fortunate that they had people like Esky and Ricky and other people along the way, but you know what I brought at that time was resources and knowledge, and so it kind of all mixed together, and then, you know, now they've got a great team with them and doing great things. And now it's like, okay, these guys are off and running, like, onto the next ones.
So, man, and everyone's behind them. Hey, just before I got to give a shout out. I fucking forgot to shout out Sip Supplies. But do you want a drink? Because I just feel like I'm going to take one, and then they're all different flavors, so you can choose first. Yeah, Sip Supplies. You know, okay, well, that's a water for you, because I was just like, just in case. I'm about to crack this. But I didn't want to crack and be a rude guy, you know? Yeah, be like, oh, yeah, sick. Like, I take its flavor, and you're like, yeah. So anyway, be like, oh, shit, that was my flavor, bitch. Shit. All right. Next question. I think this is good for you, and this is why I love talking to you, bro, because you've actually sort of you've been able to have a front seat to it all, you know. But right now, in terms of you know, the indigenous representation, you know, in hip hop and music, I say sort of mostly hip hop, I suppose, because that's what we're predominantly involved in, and
like Lil Wayne said, I am hip hop.
Yeah, you know that's what we're.
Shout out to Lil
doing.
Tooch.
Yeah, he's a bit weird, but you know, indigenous representation, Polynesian representation is lacked in the past, and we're talking about how before it was like, you know, it's getting sort of stronger. Is there anyone else, you know, particularly, you know, behind the scenes that you feel has been a bit of a driving force to getting these guys in the spotlight? You know, Briggs and
yeah,
you know,
definitely
Patrina,
Briggs,
even like
Patrina, big advocate for culture and music, and you know, I kind of feel like Patrina's name doesn't get mentioned enough. but she's cool with that though. She likes to play.
Yeah, she's
The
never had to
background,
have
yeah.
her face on the
Yeah,
front.
you know, and
she's always the one just to the side holding
Yeah,
the pluck.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know, and she's always open to people hitting her up about stuff, and you know, she's been a big part of my development as well. You know,
Yep.
like I always talk
Would
about.
you say she'd be a bit of a mentor almost?
Yeah,
to you?
yeah, definitely. You know, in that space, yeah. You know, and I think, you know, I respect her as someone that's genuinely part of the culture and has
Mm.
been for years.
Yep.
And you know, when I talk about her, I often talk about you know, true power is being able to empower others.
Yep.
And that's what I feel she does for me. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm good with what I do, but then she put me into a space that I wasn't familiar with, but had that belief and faith and like, look, man, you're here because you earned your spot here, you know, and just do your thing, you know, I'll be here. And that for me is like, that's what you want, you know. You don't want someone
Confidence
to be
booster.
tying shoelaces and holding your hands. You want someone to be like, I'm here, go, you know, like when you need something, just hit me up, you know. And she's very much that for me, you know. So, you know, endlessly bigging her up, and you know, big up Ziggy as well, Ziggy and Manny,
Ziggy,
like doing
without
their
doubt.
thing with
Getting
the
the homies in
area.
the spotlight.
Yeah, you know, because when I first met them, you know, they were working and still are like heavily with Manu and Wise and Dopamine and I Am Solo and Blessed. You know, like they had a great studio space.
Down at Alexandria.
Yeah, like the Dream Big
Manual.
Studios, and that was the first time I went to something like that, where a whole kind of like building was full of mad creatives.
Yeah.
And I would go there and just be mad inspired by that, you know, seeing these guys work and how they work with each other and that sound they were kind of creating at that time
Yep.
before it really started to pop. And, you know, so big up them, big up Low Key as well. You know, he's doing some great things. You know, he's got Lips and he's now working with Enzo and Pete and, you know, some other artists. And, yeah, there's been a lot of, you know, like Kev as well. Always, you know, 24 karat Kev. There's a lot of people backstage. I think that's my phone. Sorry.
That's all right, bro. If you need to, you'd be like,
I
ding.
thought I turned it off.
I'll turn my other.
But
That's
yeah, I
brilliant.
mean, there's
So-
been from my era. There's not that many, but coming along, there's people that don't mind not being
they're
in
cool
the
being
front,
back.
You know,
yeah.
they don't have to be the man or the woman. You know, they're happy to be in the back, facilitating a lot of these things that are happening.
100%, man, and it's positive to see. And again, it's
Shout out to Josh as well.
it's a better representation, I think. Of it's funny because it actually goes back to, you know, how you said like it was like, you know, hip hop and like the underground, it was multicultural. Yeah. It was a more even playing field because it wasn't about color. It was about skill, and it was about you know, holding down your area, or you know, where you're from or whatever. So now I think that it's so positive to see, because hip hop, that what we know of it, is getting a better full light representation, rather than just like, well, here's this little pocket. You know what I mean? So going from that and then moving on to you know, Forever Ever, which is dope, and coupling that with Sony. Did that relationship start with Petrina?
Yeah.
And you know, how did that come about and develop? And you know, because like you said before, you were sort of like, I don't want to say confused, but you're sort of like not 100% sure of how they wanted you to bring talent in and stuff like that. So how did that come
Yeah.
about, and how did it get more solidarity as it got along?
Yeah, because so people who aren't familiar with Petrina, she started her own PR company like years ago, and she would represent a lot of local artists in the hip hop and R&B circles. And you know, I'll deal with her a lot through radio. She would bring talent through interviews and stuff. And yeah, so I think one of her clients was you know, she'd do stuff with Sony, and I think what I felt was things were starting to shift in the industry, like hip hop and R&B becoming the biggest selling genres.
Just in the globe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like globally, you know,
Yep.
and I feel like Sony were kind of like, okay, we need to be moving with this, you know.
So so I always laugh.
Yeah.
Fucking Sony. I wish,
You know, so-
I wish it was me. They tried. That's all, geez. Yeah.
So yeah, and they offered Petrina full-time jobs there, and so what I felt happened was like, okay, if we're really going to do this, we need people involved that are really from the culture and
Yep.
Genuinely.
Oh, your phone's blowing up, bro.
Yeah,
People are watching
sorry,
the Godzilla podcast.
Does anyone want to turn that off, or should I turn it off? Or
You can turn it off if you want.
just,
I'm just trying to make
switch.
sure that you're not distracted. You know what I mean?
No, I just feel bad that
Just pass it. No, don't feel bad, bro. This is casual as shit.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
no, I feel rude, but yeah, so
She reached out to you because you were in the culture.
yeah, you know,
Yep.
and she knows the kind of mentorship, and I just had my finger on the pulse, and yeah, she reached out to see if I wanted to be involved, and as you know, like major labels have a certain stigma attached to it,
Yeah.
you know, and rightfully so in a lot of instances. So I was kind of like, do I, people like Nino Brown would, because he did a lot of stuff with Universal, he would often say like, yeah, they got a bad name, but if you go there with your intention and what you want straight up,
Yep.
and they take it,
Yep.
then what's the harm in that? And I used to think that too. That would make me think like, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Well, it's true as well. I mean, if you look at the approach that you sort of took, well, I don't want to say approach you took because I think it's organic for you as well. It's very natural, but look at the same situation, like people are looking at, Triple J in this light, but then you come in and you're like the bridge. You know what I mean? Look at the Sony situation. It's like, oh, well, we were looking at Sony in this light or major labels in this light, and then you again is like, well, you're the bridge. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's the thing that my uncle used to say. He used to say, if you want to change something, you have to be
In it.
100%
to
change it.
Can't
we
change
could
from the
bark
outside.
about
What are
it
you
all
supposed to
day.
do? Fucking peg rocks at the building?
Yeah,
Be like,
we could, and that's cool too. Like, but if we really want to be at that table or be a part of that conversation, we have to be in there.
100%.
And for me, it's always been like, let me get in there and build this thing, and then people take what I've learned and you take it further.
Yeah.
It's always been about change and shift, and that's what, I'd have meetings with them. Because again, you kind of walk into these spaces and there's like no one there looking like you. You know what I mean? Just like,
Yeah, man.
well,
Bro,
what do you know about hip hop? Like, what
So
do you know about the
crazy.
culture? Like,
I'll tell you a funny story, actually. You'll appreciate this one. This is back in like Sony days. Like, I think his name was JP. I don't know if he's still there. But anyway, I got like just before I had a promo video to do the next day, I got into a fucking punch up at Good Bar. This guy,
as you do back
as
then.
you do back in the day. And this guy beat the shit out of me. My face was all fucked up. Anyway, so Louie calls me the next day. She's like, "You ready for this interview?" I'm like, "Yo," I'm talking like this because my nose is still full of blood. Like, "Yo, bad news. I got a punch up last night, so my face is all fucked up." And this is a video interview. And I remember it was crazy. The guy at JP, he was like he was like Dennis's 2IC sort of thing. He was like, fucking, fuck is he doing? He's an artist. He shouldn't be doing this shit. La 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 la. And then Louis like, fuck, it's hip hop. Like, fuck, we supposed to do? Like, you're getting punch ups. Like, that's what it is. So he's keen to do the interview still. So I did this promo video with my face fucked up.
Wow,
but
is
then
that out there?
I wish I could find it because I still had like my nose all swollen, my fucks. But the funny thing is when I went into this in there, and yeah, because nobody's like you. But then he comes up, he's like, "Hey man, it's fucking hip hop. Yeah, well done." Like you behind the scenes, was blowing Louis up, for it. So but
Yeah, I mean, and you have to be in there to change things and
Yep.
the culture of things, and not only for people of color, black people, but for women as well. And there has to be a lot of
Your segue king
in-
tonight, bro.
in
Because my
light
next
of-
question,
yeah, in light of everything that's happening, that people are, people are rightfully getting ridiculed for like what are you doing to
Yeah.
change things, and that was the thing for me, like shout out to Tim as well. He was very, very cool, and I just felt like, okay, this feels right.
Yep.
Like if we're gonna change things, then we need allies, we need resources, and shout out to them. They've been very good. And again, Petrina, like I could never big her up enough. And so I'm in a fortunate position to where to where I'm able to kind of make change.
Yep.
You know, at least start it.
Yeah,
You know?
without
And
doubt.
people coming up after like really take it somewhere.
And I mean, yeah, because it's still early, and everything still that you're doing now is, I feel like it's just another level of foundational, you know, even with the coolism and the artistry, foundational, even with the, you know, the hip hop show and changing things from the inside, foundational. And then here with, you know, the label and all the work you're putting in, foundational. And it's funny that you said, bro, it's another segue, because my other question, you know, I saw you got CG Fez.
Yeah.
But also
Esky, another Esky graduate.
another Esky production.
Esky needs to be in
We need
A&R.
to kick on Esky
Someone-
straight up.
Esky needs
so
A&R
we're gonna-
job somewhere.
A&R job. We're hooking it up. So Hal said it here first. Like, we got it on tape. He's going to try and get Esky an A&R job through Street Uni. Anyway, but here's the other thing you said, because, you know, you said female representation. And one thing that I notice about Forever Ever at the moment, which I fucking really love, and, you know, I've spoken to Mackenzie, like my partner, about this a bit as well, but everything that I see at the moment is a lot of female representation for Forever Ever. You know, was that sort of conscious, or again just organic, or, you know?
No, it was definitely conscious.
Yep.
I mean, you know, I always hated anyway breaking it down, female, male MCs. You know, oh, she's good for a female MC.
Yeah, that's whack.
You know, it's whack. You know that.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
It's just embedded in some people's mind to think like that.
Yep.
But yeah, I was just very conscious about kind of looking around what's happening, and I just knew that I wanted to lead the label with like strong female energy.
So good, bro.
You know, it just
Sparrow,
because it's very
Eagle.
testosterone driven
Yeah.
culture and music and yeah, you know, and there were like some women I was talking to, you know, shout out to Tazzy as well. Like she's a great artist. Didn't quite work with her, but I just knew that it just had to. I just feel someone like in my position, it just had to happen, you know.
Yeah.
Because if I wasn't gonna do that, then who was, you know?
Yeah, without
And
doubt.
you know, we had some awesome artists out there, but yeah, it was just something I consciously wanted to do, and Hosey is just not only a great talent, she's just a beautiful soul as well, and
Yep.
you know, like working with her, and you know, working with 1-4 is like, I mean, yeah, 1-4, I love 1-4, they're my boys, man, you know, but man, they are, as Esky would, you know, they are a handful. And to work with Hootie was just like, it was like a breeze, you know.
Yeah, are you ready to record? Yes. Have you guys stuff written? Yes. You ready for the show? Yes.
You're at home, right? You're not locked out, like, you know. But again,
You're at home, right?
you know, but again, like she had awesome parents too that were
good.
that I
mentors
wanted to contact.
and family.
That's a funny story. I told the story.
That's what we're here for, the stories.
You know, when I first started talking to her, she was 16, and she's 17 now, and 16, and I was kind of just reached out, like I do with a lot of young artists that I'm digging. I was like, oh, you know, I like what you do. You know, like, I'm just saying, oh, I see you.
Yep.
If you need any,
Which is a big thing, bro.
Yeah, you know, and I never want to go in with the unsolicited, like, yeah, I think you should. Blah, blah, blah. You know, it's like, yeah, piss off, old man. Like,
Get your record deal.
yeah, you know. And so I just reached out, and then we started talking about the label and how I wanted her to be a part of it. And it's like, oh, well, let me just reach out to your parents first.
Yep.
Because just out of respect to them, and I think legally you kind of have to do that anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, you should anyway. Like she's a minor, so you know, she's like, oh, cool. Here's my dad's number. I was like, yeah, man. And here I'm thinking like I'm gonna talk to like my dad, right?
Yeah.
So like, I'm like, oh, hi, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, hey, bro. I was like, oh shit, this guy's like my age. you know?
Yeah.
And it was that kind of awakening, like, wow, okay, like, she could be pretty much my daughter, you know, like
Straight up.
how young it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, she you know, big up Poe. You know, he, you know, I'd have a lot of conversations with Tia as well. The parents are very supportive of what she does, and that makes it a lot easier too. You know, when you're dealing with young artists and parents are involved. You know, and I think it's just my upbringing as well. You know, like being Tongan and just having respect for elders. You know, it's always like, you always have to do that first before anything else.
Yeah, without doubt, man. It's just, and it's real inspiring to see, I suppose, you know what I mean, as well, that you're not taking your, you know, it's like, with great power comes great responsibility. But it's like, I mean, but it's true, you know, and so it's really positive to see, you know, you utilize that power for, you know, like, wherever you can get an edge in for, like, I hate the word minority, but maybe a group that's probably, you know, unfairly disadvantaged, whether it be because of the color of their skin or their gender or something like that. You're consciously carving out like a step for them to be like, yo, no one else going to provide that step. I'm going to do that for you.
I will say as well though, like they have to like
Work.
we have to work, but it have to be just like a mad artist as well.
Oh yeah.
You know, like can't be like, okay, you tick all the boxes, you rappers, but we'll work with that. You know, like they still have to be
Dope.
dope.
Yeah,
Because it's still hip hop. It's still music that, you know, I can't work with anything that I wouldn't listen to.
Yeah.
You know, and because there are a lot of artists that like, oh, I'd like to work with them just for other reasons than music. But if you're not passionate about the music, then how are you going to stand by it or stand behind it? You know, when everyone else doesn't want to listen to it, but you know that's what drives you is the passion. Like, nah, you got to hear this. You got to hear this. And if you don't have that in your heart, then it's like,
yeah. If you're not, if it's not like genuine to you, then it's a hard sell.
Yeah, exactly. You know, because there are artists out there. It's like, oh wow, yeah, I can see this working. But I'm not crash hard about the music.
You know, I'm not playing in my car.
Yeah, you know, so what's the use of doing that, you know?
Yep. 100%, man. This is dope. So I sort of got two questions, I suppose, then I got questions. Then we got questions, I bet. Yeah, we got questions. All right, mad. Current state, I mean, I know this is a bit of a standardized question, but you know, current state of hip hop, and you know, in Australia, how do you think we're looking? And you know, obviously, because you'll have some insider info that maybe you can't disclose to us about. No, but you know, there's a lens on us. I feel at least, and I'm not in those major label rooms, but it certainly feels in terms of the culture, there is a little bit of an eye on Australia and waiting for us to, you know, just get stronger and stronger to push into those other things. But you know, there's like areas and regions. But how do you feel we are at the moment? And you know, anyone you're looking at?
I like the last kind of 4 years, man. I've loved watching it grow.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? We talked about, you know, a lot of artists with African heritage. You know, like how they all came through, like the Midas Golds, Money Crooks, and Sampa the Great, Remy. You know, a lot of these artists, and I just love how it's evolving, and people from other countries can now look at it and go, okay, you know, I can relate to this.
Yeah, they can relate back the other way.
You know?
Yeah.
And when I was in London a couple of years ago, even then they were like, okay, so what's happening in Australia? You know, they had already heard of Kid Laroi, so they were kind of like, oh, okay, so something's happening out those ways. Because at that point too, like Toronto was just killing everything.
Yeah.
You know, America will always be America, and UK will do its thing. But I kind of feel like people were looking for the next hotspot, so to speak. And yeah, I think we're in a very good position to be able to, you know, because it's not only the 1-4s and the Hefs. You know, there's again Sampa the Great doing some great things. You know, like Jada Pinkett Smith is like one of her biggest fans. You know, like she has some great fans doing some great things. And,
Yeah.
And yes, it's just, you know, Kayit as well. You know, like doing some awesome stuff, and it just is very genuine. You know, and they're just making great music. You know, and it's no more. It's pretty good for Australian.
Yeah,
it's like it's
that.
good.
It's just dope music.
Yeah,
100%. That goes back to what you sort of said. Now, lastly, man, like big ups, dad to dad. You know,
man, is this gonna make me cry or?
I hope so. Makes good viewing.
No, but talk about my kids and family, bro.
Nah, like dad to dad, man. Probably the most inspiring thing, you know, for me to see. There's not heaps of us out there. In hip hop, because you know some of us, unfortunately, our lives were the casualty of our lifestyles, you know. But what's like beautiful to see is, you know, you be such a, you know, to see hip hop represented purely and authentically and genuinely, but then also to see children injected into that in such a positive light and still have them, you know, have such a great mentor as a father and have such a, you know, positive role model with, you know, with your parents and the solidarity they get there, but then also to have that such a positive association with hip hop that you know, I certainly strive to do with my kids, and you know, it's beautiful to see that. How have you found, you know, how have you found that balance, and you know, as a dad, as a, you know, as a hip hop dad, you know, like, how's that balance been, and you know, is there anything you feel you've done to manage the balance and the responsibilities that you have?
I must say, you know, like having a very understanding and supportive wife.
Yep.
Makes the biggest difference.
Mm.
You know, like shout out to my wife Shani. You know, she from the like I said before when I was music. So you always gonna put second in music.
And she's like,
she was smart. She knew. She was like, okay, we'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, she's been. I think because she knew how passionate I was with it and how it completes me. You know, and like you know, like you don't feel yourself if you're not doing anything hip hop related. Yeah. And if that was to be taken away, it leaves quite a big hole in your heart and your soul, you know. And I was very fortunate to have like a wife like Shani who was always making more money than I was making. I never had an issue with that, you know. Like a lot of my boys would be like, oh, whatever. I was like, no, man. You know, I was proud that she was doing that, you know.
Yeah.
And she would understand like why I would be up late or in the studio or why I do this and that, and she was always very supportive, and that makes a big difference. You know, like there's nothing worse than being with someone that doesn't like your music or doesn't understand. You know, they don't have to like it, but they can. You know, you'd want a partner that appreciates it.
Yeah,
like
appreciate what it means to you.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like, oh, I don't really like that band, or what that song that you did, but whatever.
About the ladies.
Yeah,
ladies.
But yeah, she's very supportive and you know, to have some great kids as well. You know, I definitely feel like I'm blessed, and it is, as you know, it is a lot of work. You know, especially because we never clock off with hip hop.
Yeah, no, true.
You know, you're always thinking about, always listening, you're always watching. It's not like another job where you can just go there and then clock out at 5 or whatever, and then, you know, that's it.
Yeah.
You know, like you can have it, you can have that job, but then it's like back to hip hop. So you're like essentially working 3-4 jobs.
Yeah.
You know, with kids 5. You know, and it is a hard thing to balance, but sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. You know, I think everything is a work in progress. That's the thing. You know, I think you can never say you have something fully sussed.
Yeah.
Because that's when the world will flip, be like, oh, really? You got that sus? Okay, cop this. Boom.
You got to be ready.
Yeah, you know, you just got to always work on it. And it's like a relationship. You know, you always got to work on it, you know. And, you know, I think, you know, at times too, like I've faltered in a relationship, but, you know, you just got to own up to it and work on it. And it's the same with family, with music, you know, and it, like I said, it's a hard thing to balance, but if you genuinely love it, you'll find time.
Yeah, straight up.
Yeah, to do it.
Amen, bro.
And shout out to the dads too, because I know for a lot of MCs too that have kids and stop everything. You know, stop being a rapper, or stop listening to music, and
you see that's you can see they're cut.
Yeah, you know, and they're kind of bitter about it, but at the same time, I can't judge. You know, it's like life circumstances.
Yeah, could have been anyone. Could have been us.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so, but, you know, again, fortunate that people, you know, like you and I are still around, loving it, helping, doing what we can, contributing, you know, yourself, providing this platform with the crew here, you know.
Oh, bro, I appreciate that.
Yeah, and it's needed. You know, the more platforms, the better, and more support, and, you know, I think we'll be in like setting a good foundation for the next generations.
Amen, bro. Just last, future for forever ever, you know, Future for Triple J. I mean, anything new on the way for that, or that's still gonna be smashing that out.
I told Triple J, I said, man, I'm be there till you fire me. Pretty much. Well, I'm blessed, I'm blessed to have that job.
Yeah, it's a dope job, bro.
Man, to be able to play hip hop as a job, and there's definitely a lot more that goes into that.
Yeah.
But essentially, that's what it is, And
Yep.
I'm very thankful for that opportunity, and like all opportunities, you gotta just grab it and run with it.
Yep.
Because you never know, Because without the Triple J job, who knows if the Sony job would have came up? If I wasn't doing an MC, who knows, the Triple J job would definitely not have been up.
100%, bro.
I often used to say that I was lucky, but my wife would say like, "Nah, man, you worked
earned
yourself,
it, bro. Don't even.
You worked
I
yourself
know. I mean,
to these spaces and opportunities." And
Yep.
So I mean, in all seriousness, like, yeah, I love doing the show still and being able to play these young artists that may not get a look in anywhere else.
And sometimes you play as old artists as well, so straight up.
What was that?
I said sometimes you play the old artists as well.
No,
so.
I have to. That's where I'm from. Like
100%.
I think I'm in a great position where I grew up in all eras.
Yeah,
And I love today as much as I did 1991.
Fuck yeah.
So yeah, in the future, forever, ever, it's the same. It's like just trying to represent great music and great people and getting stories heard and having, which what I'm big is representation.
Yeah.
If you can't see it, you can't be it. Like as the saying goes, if you don't see it, you can't be it.
Yep.
And I think having people like Hoodsie in these spaces, young brown females who are gay, be able to be like, fuck yeah, I can do that too.
I can do that too, yeah. And that's such a target, like you need to start to talk to, all of that so that they can be inspired to step up and be as great as they have the potential to be. Yeah, 100%, bro. Eski,
Yeah.
we got questions.
Eski boy.
We got a couple of questions. This one's from T-Rex, wondering how do I get my music played on Triple J?
This is like $100 question. It is no, it's a question.
It is a tough one. Well, there's a couple of ways though. That's the thing.
Like it's a difficult one because it happens all different ways. I think a good way is to start an Unearthed account.
Yep.
If you're not familiar with Triple J Unearthed, it's essentially for emerging artists to upload their songs and then be part of this community where you share your music and other people can hear it or comment, download it, and I look through Unearthed quite a lot, because there's a lot of artists that I discover on there, and you start there, and but I think just man, if your music is dope, it's going to be noticed one way or another. I feel, if it's meant to happen, it will happen. So it's kind of I don't know if that's the kind of answer you're looking for. Sorry, bro, but I feel like if it's meant to be, I should say this too. Like I love the show and I love representing the show, but if for some reason it doesn't end up on the show or doesn't end up on Triple J, it's not the be all and end all.
Straight up.
You look at artists like Cursor, he paved his own way, 1-4, many others that have bypassed Triple J to do great things.
Yeah.
I know a lot of artists. It's a big thing to get played on the show, and I appreciate that. And if it does, like if I feel it does fit on the show, then I'll play it. You know what I mean? So, shout out T-Rex.
Yeah, shout out Rexy.
This one's from Staunch Skay.
Hey. Yeah. Oh shit.
Nah, he's just wondering if HAU's still gonna make some songs with Danielson.
Oh, what was that? Sorry?
He's wondering if you're still gonna do stuff with Coolism.
Oh, with Coolism. Yeah, man. Never say never. But at this point, I just know that we're just doing our own thing. I know, like Daniel DJs for Birds as well. So he's not doing shows now, but he's traveling a lot with Birds, and and obviously I'm doing my thing too. I think we were making music since '92. And the last album was 2010. So that's a long relationship.
Long ass time.
You know, so you know, a lot of things. Man, that's a lot longer than a lot of people's marriages. You know what I mean? So you know, I kind of feel like we had a great time doing Coolism, and we learned a lot from each other, and I think that's just part of the lives that will stay there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in saying that, like I said, I'll never hang up the mic, but it's just not the main focus at the moment. So who knows?
Who knows? Who knows, Skay?
Who knows?
Maybe it will come. So just keep praying.
Can we squeeze in 2 more?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
This
how
one's
many we got? 10?
this is just comments and things
Comments in the props. So
yeah, some props.
Yep.
What kind of comment? What's the worst comment on there? Hear it.
I'll ask this first one. This is from MC Trey.
Oh, what's up,
Trey,
Trey?
what's up?
Yeah,
Trey?
Trey's on. She says, "Thank you for the journey down memory lane.
Yeah,
When's the book coming out? How?"
Oh man.
Yeah,
That's
actually.
it. Hey,
no.
like shout out to MC Trey. Like, forgive me. Like, Trey was one of the early connections as well.
Yeah.
And especially because she was one of the very few islanders that were doing something there.
Yep.
It was her, DJ Leroy Brown, of course.
Shit.
He was DJing around and also DJ for Urban Poets. And there were other, like DJs from New Zealand that are doing their thing as well. Cool Hand Luke and
Luke.
Randy
Luke was
and rest in peace. And
Yeah.
but yeah, Trey, like always, big love for Trey because she showed us a lot of love too and took us on tour. So shout out to you, Trey. I didn't mean to leave you out of that part, but the book, yeah, I don't know.
Dude, you should do a book.
My wife said to do a book.
100%. You should do
My
a
wife
book.
said to do a book, but I just don't know. Maybe the time's not right.
Shout out to the public. Yeah, true. Because, actually how you said, like, for MC to Triple J to Forever Ever to the book. That's to the publishing
that
house.
could be the next
All right.
evolution.
Well, Trey just commented, said, you need to write it because clowns are trying to write it. She's saying that there's people trying to voice the scene when they're not part of the scene.
I agree with that.
You know?
Oh,
Yeah.
Hal's not trying to throw shade on anyone else, but Hal does know that his book will be better. But I said that. Yeah.
Another question for Hal. Was Jam Hot all put together in one day? From Steve.
Steve from Canberra?
Steve Mellis?
Oh, in one day. I don't know. I kind of feel like, well, what's he heard?
What?
Have I said that before?
What is the question?
The question was,
The song Jam Hot, was it made in a day?
was it made in one
Yeah,
day?
it probably could have. Definitely, like, not from start to finish, but as a demo,
I'm trying
probably.
to think back, like.
Yeah, that's like 2008, 9. It could have been, because a lot of stuff was, if it just flowed, it flowed, and it was done. Some tracks took, as you know, it could take
Reworking.
weeks.
Yeah.
But I know from start to finish, it definitely didn't take a day, but as a demo, it probably did.
Cool. Just a whole bunch of like props. How's the king? Keep doing what you're doing.
I appreciate that.
stuff.
Yes, thank you.
Hey, man,
Yeah.
100%. Well, my bro, again, thank you so much. Been an absolute pleasure. And, I know that we would have got out of this what I think we aim to, and, hearing your journey. And, it's just about gems, man, and knowledge and foundation shit, you know what I mean? So thank you so much.
I appreciate you, bro. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, team.
Thank you.
Appreciate you having me.
Big
Up
shout
the
out.
Raiders 2020.
Up the Raiders. Nah, man, the Bulldogs. Yeah, you know the vibes. Big shout out, I have to say, Sip Supplies. Massive shout out to at Sip Supplies on Instagram. Hit them up. They got the Jolly Ranchers and all the
shout out to
Fago.
you. I would drink it on camera, but I don't drink soda. So
Yeah, yeah. So don't worry, we got the water for Hal, but shout out to the boys. Massive
might
shout
be
out
the
to
best water I've ever tasted.
yeah, yeah, man. Like that's top shelf right there. Shout out to Open Source, obviously, Molotov, and also Split Atoms on the beat. We out. Thank you very much.